By 1944, Europe had been under Nazi domination for nearly 5 years. France, once proud and free, now lay under the heavy weight of occupation. Cities were scarred, villages burned, and millions lived in constant fear. Roads and railways were patrolled by German troops, checkpoints controlled every village, and markets whispered under watchful eyes. Resistance fighters moved cautiously, sabotaging rail lines and relaying intelligence to the Allies. But everyday life remained strangled by oppression. Across the English Channel, in the calm countryside of southern England, an army prepared to strike back. Young men, some barely out of boyhood and others hardened by previous battles in Africa and Italy, were poised to take the first step into history. Their mission was clear: reclaim Europe from the grip of tyranny, but the cost was unknown. Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious invasion in history, had been meticulously planned over months. 156,000 soldiers, 7,000 ships, and 11,000 aircraft were mobilized. Every detail was calculated, every contingency considered, yet no plan could prepare the men for the chaos and terror awaiting on Normandy's beaches. The strategy was audacious: break through Hitler's Atlantic Wall, establish a foothold, and pave the way for the liberation of Western Europe. Generals pored over maps, miniature models of beaches, and photographs of fortifications. They debated tides, winds, artillery placements, and enemy positions, yet the reality of war remained unpredictable. Britain had been transformed into a colossal military camp. Fields that once grew wheat and barley now housed soldiers and tanks. Villages teemed with troops moving supplies, drilling endlessly and preparing for departure. Civilians lived among the constant hum of activity, offering tea and bread to soldiers, sharing quiet smiles, yet understanding the immense sacrifices to come. For the soldiers, waiting was a torment. Drill after drill, practice after practice, they prepared for an assault on terrain many had never seen. Engineers practiced demolitions, medics rehearsed battlefield care, and infantrymen ran through mock assaults. Letters and photographs from loved ones provided solace and a fragile link to life beyond war. Private William Carter of the 29th Infantry Division wrote to his wife, June 5, 1944, "They say tonight we cross. Some laugh to hide the nerves, others sit silent. I've written to you, told you I'd see you soon. I don't know if that's true. God help us." Corporal James Whitmore of the 6th Airborne Division recorded, May 1944, "We're quartered in a farmer's field. Locals bring tea, try to make us feel at home. Everyone senses the storm approaching, yet no one speaks its name aloud. We just wait." On June 4th, a storm swept the English Channel. Gale-force winds battered anchored ships, waves surged, and rain lashed soldiers preparing to depart. The invasion, scheduled for June 5th, was postponed. Ships remained in port, men huddled in wet holds, tension mounting. Fear mingled with impatience. Finally, the storm began to abate, opening a narrow window for the attack. The men prepared silently. Paratroopers checked equipment, inspected parachutes, and memorized drop zones. Engineers double-checked explosives, medics stocked supplies, and infantrymen ran final drills. Private Henry Wallace wrote, "Tomorrow may be the day we fight the fiercest battle of our lives. I carry the hope of thousands in my heart. Please pray for me." The night before D-Day was tense and quiet. Soldiers whispered memories of home, shared letters, or sat in silence, each steeling themselves for what lay ahead. Sergeant Robert Thompson of the 101st Airborne recorded, "Tomorrow we leap into darkness. I stare at my boots, imagining the German defenses waiting below. I pray I land in the right zone. I pray I see my family again." Brotherhood and courage strengthened each man, preparing them for the unimaginable. At dawn on June 6, 1944, the Channel was restless under the rising sun. Ships carried troops, tanks, and supplies toward the fortified beaches. Paratroopers leapt into darkness behind enemy lines. Infantrymen waded through chest-high waves under heavy fire. Engineers cleared paths through obstacles, and medics tended the wounded. Each soldier faced the possibility of death, yet advanced with resolve, hope, and humanity. Normandy awaited, and history was about to be written. The night of June 5th gave way to a restless dawn. The English Channel stretched before the men, dark and choppy, carrying the weight of anticipation and fear. For thousands of paratroopers, the first task of D-Day would begin before the beaches themselves were reached. They had trained for months to drop behind enemy lines, to capture bridges, roads, and key positions that would prevent German reinforcements from reaching the shores. Yet no training could prepare them for the sheer terror of leaping into darkness, into a landscape they could barely see, against an enemy ready and waiting. Private Thomas Harding of the 101st Airborne gripped his rifle, heart pounding, as the transport plane shook under the roar of the engines. Around him, men whispered last prayers, adjusted their parachutes, and tried to maintain calm. He thought of his family, of his younger brother waiting back home, of the letter tucked into his pocket that he might never mail. He had imagined this moment countless times in drills, but imagining it was nothing like facing it. When the green light finally flashed, signaling the jump, fear and instinct collided. One by one, men leapt from the open doors into the night. The wind tore at their uniforms, the sound of engines faded, and for a brief moment, silence fell. Then the chaos began. Anti-aircraft fire streaked through the sky. Bullets tore into the darkness. Some men landed off target, tangled in trees, caught in rivers, or behind enemy lines. Others found themselves alone, disoriented, desperately trying to regroup. Corporal James Whitmore recalled later, "I landed in a field surrounded by woods. The first thing I saw was a German patrol. I had to crawl, hide, and fight my way to the rendezvous point. Every second felt like an eternity. Paratroopers quickly discovered that even the most careful plans could not account for the randomness of combat, the way the night itself seemed to conspire against them." Meanwhile, on the beaches, the first wave of infantry approached under the gray light of dawn. Landing crafts churned through the channel, engines straining against the current. Soldiers checked weapons, tightened helmet straps, and steeled themselves for the onslaught. Private William Carter, boarding a Higgins boat at Omaha Beach, remembered gripping his rifle so tightly his knuckles whitened. He tried to think of home, of Mary, of the life he hoped to return to, but every thought was drowned by the roar of engines, the splash of water against the hull, and the distant thunder of German artillery. As the landing craft approached the beach, obstacles became visible. Wooden stakes, steel hedgehogs, and mines littered the sand. German machine guns fired relentlessly, and artillery shells exploded with thunderous force. Soldiers were forced to wade through chest-high water, slipping on algae-covered rocks, bullets whizzing past. Some were hit instantly, others stumbled, helping the wounded or attempting to shield comrades. The air was thick with smoke, sand, blood, and the smell of burning oil and cordite. Private Henry Wallace later wrote, "I remember the water rising above my waist, the cries of men all around, the screams, the gunfire. I thought, this is it. This is what we trained for, and it's worse than anything I imagined. But we had to move forward, one step at a time." Across the beaches, similar scenes unfolded. At Utah Beach, British and Canadian forces faced fortified bunkers and rough terrain. Soldiers climbed cliffs, crawled through barbed wire, and pushed forward under heavy fire. Every man had to rely on training, instinct, and the men next to him. Engineers played a critical role in clearing obstacles and creating safe lanes for the advancing troops. Under fire, they detonated mines, removed barbed wire, and marked safe paths. Many were injured or killed in the process, their courage quiet but essential. Medics worked tirelessly, dragging men from the sand, applying bandages, and carrying the wounded to makeshift triage points. The screams of pain mixed with the commands of officers, the roar of artillery, and the relentless chatter of machine guns. Meanwhile, the airborne troops regrouped behind enemy lines. Small groups of men, separated from their units, engaged in guerrilla-style tactics, attacking German strongpoints, sabotaging communications, and setting up roadblocks. Sergeant Robert Thompson recalled, "We were scattered, but we had to keep moving. Every bridge we took, every road we blocked, meant lives saved on the beach. The chaos was complete, but we had a job, and we had to do it." Throughout the morning, waves of troops continued to land. Some never reached the sand. Others fought through the hail of bullets, advancing under withering fire. The beaches became a blur of movement, courage, and survival. Soldiers shouted orders, dragged comrades from the surf, and pressed forward despite exhaustion, fear, and injury. The noise was deafening, the smoke blinding, yet progress was made inch by inch, yard by yard. Corporal Thomas Reed of the British 6th Airborne later wrote, "I remember crawling through a shell crater, trying to get my bearings, helping a wounded comrade. I was terrified, but I had no choice. Every step forward was a victory, even if small. The enemy was everywhere, but we were determined. By mid-morning, small beachheads had been secured, but at tremendous cost. Thousands of men had fallen, thousands more were injured. And yet the operation continued, driven by the courage and determination of those who survived the first hellish hours. Amid the chaos, ordinary acts of bravery emerged. A soldier dragging a friend to cover, a medic risking his life to apply first aid, a private charging a machine gun nest to save others. These acts, often unnoticed in the grand scale of history, were the threads that held the invasion together. Letters and diaries later revealed the personal cost and heroism behind the statistics. Private James McConnell noted, "I saw men I trained with lying on the sand, and still others pressed forward." The fear was constant, but we could not stop. We had to survive, and we had to keep moving. The success of D-Day did not come from strategy alone, nor from superior numbers. It came from the resilience of individual soldiers facing unimaginable terror. The chaos of the landings forced men to make split-second decisions, to act beyond fear, and to protect one another under conditions that defied comprehension. The courage displayed was both collective and intensely personal, the sum of thousands of human decisions made in the heat of combat. By afternoon, the first objectives had been secured. Paratroopers held bridges and roadways, preventing German reinforcements from reaching the beaches. Infantry units had captured key points on the sand, engineers had cleared paths for armor, and medics continued their relentless work. The cost was staggering, yet the determination of the Allied forces carried the day. The beaches of Normandy, once a formidable obstacle, now held a foothold that would allow the liberation of Western Europe to begin. As the sun set over the blood-soaked beaches, soldiers tended to the wounded, regrouped, and prepared for the next phase. Letters would later describe exhaustion, grief, and relief in equal measure. Many wrote of friends lost, of terror witnessed, and of courage discovered. The human story of D-Day was not only about strategy and victories, but about survival, sacrifice, and the bonds forged in combat. The landings on June 6, 1944, had begun the liberation of Europe. The bravery of the men who stormed the beaches, leapt from the skies, and held their ground behind enemy lines became the foundation for victory. Every act of heroism, every struggle to survive, every step taken under fire contributed to the larger mission. The invasion was far from over, yet the courage, resilience, and determination displayed during the first day of D-Day would echo through history forever. As night fell over Normandy, the beaches were a scarred landscape of mud, blood, and wreckage. Smoke curled into the sky from exploded landing crafts and burning tanks. The roar of artillery had faded slightly, replaced by the low moans of the wounded, the crackle of distant gunfire, and the groaning of men hauling themselves to safety. Survivors huddled in shell craters, dugouts, and behind broken fortifications. The first day of the invasion had been a horrific baptism into the chaos of war. Medics worked tirelessly through the night, their hands slick with blood, bandaging limbs, stopping bleeding, and carrying men to makeshift triage stations. Private Henry Wallace of the 29th Infantry Division later wrote, "I saw men who had been shot through the chest, the legs, the arms, and yet they whispered to each other, 'Stay with me, we'll make it.' The courage was quiet, but it was everywhere. Every medic faced the impossible task of triage, deciding who could be saved immediately, who could wait, and who was beyond help. The cries of the dying were constant, but the medics moved with a determined calm, embodying the humanity that war threatened to erase. In the chaos, small acts of heroism unfolded. A young private dragged a comrade from the surf, ignoring the bullets ripping through the air. A corporal charged a machine gun nest to give his fellow soldiers a chance to advance. Engineers diffused mines while under fire, knowing one misstep could cost their lives. Paratroopers who had landed off-target fought in small groups, improvising strategies, taking down German patrols, and blocking roads to prevent enemy reinforcements. Each action, no matter how small, carried weight. Every life saved mattered, every foot gained was a step toward victory. On the beaches, officers coordinated the flow of men and supplies. Corporal James Whitmore described the scene later. Men were everywhere, some crawling, some running, some carrying the wounded. I had to shout over the chaos to keep units moving, to make sure everyone knew where to go. The sheer noise of it was unbelievable. The crashing of waves, the screams, the guns. You learn to listen through the chaos, to act without thinking, to survive. Even among the horror, brotherhood formed. Soldiers helped one another over obstacles, shared water, and comforted the terrified. Private William Carter wrote, "I don't remember how many times I helped pull someone from the sand, how many times someone else helped me up. In that moment, fear was constant, but so was the unspoken promise. We survived together or not at all." In the darkest moments, bonds forged under fire became the most powerful weapon against despair. The civilian population of Normandy also endured and aided where they could. Villagers, often hiding in their homes, risked death to guide soldiers, bring food, or carry the wounded. One farmer helped a group of paratroopers find a safe path through the countryside, his hands trembling but steady. Mothers and children watched silently from windows, praying, mourning, or offering what little help they could. The invasion was not only a military operation, it was a shared human ordeal, blending fear, courage, and resilience on both sides of the conflict. By dawn, the beaches were littered with the remnants of battle. Landing craft were sunk or destroyed, obstacles remained, and the injured filled every available space. Yet progress had been made. Paratroopers held key positions inland, engineers had cleared paths for armor, and infantry units had secured crucial points on the beaches. The foothold, though bloody and costly, was established. Every surviving soldier carried the weight of what had happened. The loss of friends, the suffering witnessed, and the knowledge that the fight was far from over. Amid the devastation, soldiers found moments of humanity. A private shared his last rations with a wounded comrade. A medic whispered encouragement while tending to a man who had lost his leg. Officers consoled men who had seen their friends fall. Each gesture, though small, was a testament to resilience. Corporal Thomas Reed wrote, "Even in hell, men reached out for each other." Fear was constant, but so was the drive to protect, to help, to survive together. That is what I remember more than anything, the quiet bravery behind every scream and every act of courage. By midday, reinforcements began arriving, bringing additional men, weapons, and supplies. The initial chaos slowly transitioned into organized advancement. Engineers continued to clear obstacles, artillery units began to fire inland, and medics kept moving tirelessly among the wounded. Each man understood that D-Day was not a single event, but a sustained effort requiring courage, endurance, and the willingness to face unimaginable dangers day after day. The human stories from this day, often overshadowed by strategy and numbers, define the essence of D-Day. Private James McConnell recalled helping a wounded soldier across the sand while under fire. He kept whispering, "Don't leave me." I couldn't. I wouldn't. I dragged him, stumbled, and somehow we made it to cover. That day, survival wasn't enough. We had to care for each other, even in the middle of hell. The bonds forged in the chaos of battle, the selflessness, and the acts of courage became the invisible threads that held the invasion together. Across Normandy, similar acts unfolded in every unit, in every squad. Paratroopers fought off German patrols in forests and fields. Infantrymen stormed bunkers, carrying the wounded with them. Medics moved from crater to crater, bandaging, lifting, and encouraging. Engineers diffused mines while under fire. Each act, repeated thousands of times, created the momentum that allowed the invasion to continue despite the staggering losses. By evening, the first day of D-Day had come to an end. The Allies held the beaches, secured key positions inland, and inflicted severe damage on the German defenses. Yet the cost was tremendous. Thousands lay dead, countless others wounded. The sounds of gunfire had faded, but were replaced by groans, cries, and the heavy silence of grief. Soldiers and medics alike understood that their bravery had secured a foothold, but that the war was far from over. As darkness fell, men rested wherever they could, shell craters, hedgerows, broken buildings. Some wrote letters, some whispered prayers, and others simply stared at the sky, exhausted, mourning their friends and gathering the strength for the days ahead. Private Henry Wallace reflected, "I don't know how many survived, how many were lost, but I remember holding the hand of a dying friend, feeling the courage of the men around me, and knowing that we were part of something bigger than ourselves." That night, in the silence after the chaos, I understood the cost of freedom. D-Day was not only a military operation, but a human crucible. The sacrifices, courage, and brotherhood displayed in those first hours and days became the backbone of the liberation of Europe. Every life lost, every act of bravery, and every struggle to survive contributed to the success of the mission. The human stories, the quiet heroism, the shared suffering, and the unbreakable bonds between soldiers remain the most enduring legacy of that fateful day. The morning after D-Day broke over Normandy with a gray, misty light. The beaches, still scarred from the previous day, were a testament to both courage and carnage. Smoke lingered in the air, mingling with the salty tang of the sea and the earthy smell of churned mud and blood. Soldiers rose from shell craters, hedgerows, and makeshift shelters. Every man knew the day ahead would demand more courage, more endurance, and more sacrifice. The foothold had been secured, but the fight inland had just begun. Engineers moved first, clearing paths through obstacles and laying bridges for tanks and vehicles. Each detonation of explosives was a controlled act of destruction, a signal that progress would continue despite the previous day's losses. Medics worked tirelessly, moving among the wounded, many still lying where they had fallen. Private William Carter observed, "Every time I thought I'd seen the worst, there were more men, more pain, more chaos. And yet, we pressed forward, helping each other, never stopping." We couldn't paratroopers regrouped in small clusters behind enemy lines, their initial drop zones scattered some miles from the intended targets. Despite the confusion, they adapted quickly, using their training and instinct to hold critical points, prevent German counterattacks, and secure roads and bridges. Sergeant Robert Thompson wrote, "We had no choice but to improvise." Every field, every farmhouse, every road became a battleground. We moved as one, even when separated, because we knew that stopping meant disaster. Infantry units advanced inland, facing fortified positions, sniper fire, and hidden mines. The terrain was treacherous. Cliffs, hedgerows, and rivers turned into natural fortresses for the defenders. Every step forward required calculation, courage, and reliance on fellow soldiers. Private Henry Wallace recalled, "We crawled through mud, over walls, under barbed wire. Every time we thought we were safe, a bullet or shell reminded us we weren't. But turning back was never an option. We kept moving because survival demanded it, and duty demanded it. Amid the chaos, acts of heroism continued to define the day. A medic ran across open ground to reach a wounded squad, bullets whipping past him. A corporal carried a severely injured man for hours to reach safety. Paratroopers ambushed German patrols, capturing prisoners and securing key locations. Engineers cleared minefields while under fire, their lives hanging on every careful movement. Each act, though small in isolation, contributed to the larger effort to solidify the beachhead. Civilian involvement remained critical. Villagers, often risking their lives, guided soldiers through forests and fields, offered food and water, and even sheltered the wounded. Children peeked from windows, mothers prayed silently, and fathers helped wherever possible. Their quiet courage and resilience underscored the collective effort required to support the invasion. The liberation of Europe was not only a military campaign, it was a shared human struggle. By afternoon, Allied forces had begun to push farther inland. Paratroopers secured additional bridges, infantry units captured key villages, and engineers repaired roads to allow armor and supply vehicles to move forward. The tide was turning, but not without cost. The landscape was littered with the remnants of battle, destroyed vehicles, craters, abandoned weapons, and countless casualties. Soldiers who survived the first day now faced exhaustion, hunger, and grief, yet pressed onward with unwavering determination. Private James McConnell described the day, "I walked through fields that had been battlefields the day before. Everywhere there were signs of courage and loss. Men we had trained with, men we had laughed with, lay where they had fallen. And still, we moved forward, carrying what we could, helping those we could, determined to honor them with every step." In these moments, the human element of D-Day, the courage, compassion, and resilience, was as vital as strategy or firepower. By evening, the Allies had established a more secure line inland. Small pockets of resistance remained, but the momentum had shifted. The German army, caught off guard by the scale, timing, and audacity of the invasion, struggled to mount effective counterattacks. Soldiers consolidated positions, tended to the wounded, and prepared for continued offensives in the days ahead. Every man understood that D-Day was only the beginning. The battle for France, and eventually Europe, had just begun. In the midst of exhaustion and grief, brotherhood endured. Soldiers shared what little they had: water, food, cigarettes, and words of encouragement. Medics moved tirelessly, bandaging wounds and carrying men to safety. Officers coordinated units, often under fire, to maintain momentum and minimize losses. Small acts of courage, compassion, and resilience stitched together the fabric of the operation. Private Henry Wallace reflected, "We survived the first day, we fought through the second, and every step forward felt like a victory, not just for us, but for those who could not move, for those who had fallen, and for the world waiting for freedom." The stories of the soldiers, medics, and civilians of D-Day would be told for generations. Letters, diaries, and recollections captured not only strategy and tactics, but the human cost and courage that defined the operation. Private William Carter wrote, "I don't remember everything, and I don't remember everyone, but I remember the fear, the hope, the hands reaching for each other, and the will to survive. That's what made us strong. That's what made D-Day possible." By nightfall, Allied forces had solidified their positions, secured key points, and set the stage for the liberation of Normandy and beyond. The beaches, once deadly traps, now held men determined to push inland. The courage, sacrifice, and resilience displayed over these critical days marked the beginning of the end for tyranny in Europe. Every soldier, every medic, every civilian who contributed carried the weight of history. Every step forward was a step toward freedom. D-Day was more than a military operation. It was a testament to human courage, endurance, and brotherhood. The men who stormed the beaches, leapt from the skies, and fought through chaos forged bonds and demonstrated bravery that would never be forgotten. The tide had turned, and the liberation of Europe had begun, fueled by the unwavering determination of thousands who risked everything to reclaim freedom. Thanks. Subscribe for more.